Hello everyone, welcome to the season review of ALR Season 2. We are in our second season of what has been an incredible journey so far, hasn't it? Of course, Season 1 started way back in March of 2019. Now we're here in December 2019, and we've had two very successful seasons. Of course, the first season was an absolute cracker, wasn't it? Where we had it was an all new driver lineup, wasn't it, for ALR, which was absolutely brilliant stuff as well. Nigel did come through to win in that incredible epic showdown with just one race to go in Abu Dhabi under the lights, where he absorbed the pressure beautifully well to take the title. He did return as well on round 4 of this season in Azerbaijan, I should say. Well, anyway, enough about the intro. This is season 2. We've got new faces, we've got new drivers, we've got returnees as well. It's going to be an absolutely incredible season. Sit back, enjoy. We've got 10 rounds of some epic action from ALR. And let's start with Australia, shall we? So this was round 1, and of course sat next to me is Nosey. Nosey, I got to say, Australia round 1 was a bit of a difficult start, wasn't it? We went straight into the race because of the new league format. What about that league format? How did you find it?
Well, we'd all been excited, I think, when the new game came out about this league format where we could all run the league through that on the game, and turned out to be a bit of a mess, didn't it? So it was a bit difficult trying to sort out the lobbies and things like that in there, and there was a few connection issues, I think, wasn't there as well, which I believe is how you missed the start.
Yeah, I did, which is, if you heard in the commentary at the time, I was very confused, which is nothing unusual there. But yeah, it was I tell you what, it was a fantastic race though, and of course there was all sorts of there's new features on the game setups as well. Talk about these setups and how the cars were different to 2018.
Well, with a brand new game, it's all a bit different to, well, it should be a bit different to the previous game. So well, we had the removal of ballast from the 2018 game, which on that point, on the weight redistribution of the car in 2018, you could really sort of help you turn in by adjusting the ballast on the setup. Obviously, they took that away for this game, which really sort of emphasised what you need to do with your roll bars and the actual downforce on the wings.
Yeah, I got to say, I think in terms of the removal of ballast, I was quite happy with that because of it made the cars a lot more unpredictable and probably harder to drive as well, which is brilliant from my point of view. Obviously not from the drivers as well. And going into Australia as well, of course, I would say race strategy was up in the air. We had some new faces in as well. Then we had, of course, Australia's grid is completely different to the final race in Abu Dhabi. But of course, at the time there, we had a new runner, Blaz, who was doing a fantastic job. He stepped in the seat and was just incredible, wasn't he, in Australia?
Yeah, I think if Blaz had carried on with Jonathan Cox, I think Racing Point would be going straight up the constructors with that, because he's a reliable racer. Unfortunately, he couldn't stick around for too long in season 2. But we also had Grillsy in there and Farf, who were doing really good jobs. Oh, I've just seen Grillsy's retired, so I won't mention him again. Sorry about that, Grillsy. But obviously, what I want to the two drivers I want to actually talk about in this video for Australia is the two Mercedes, Twan and Bogan. I was just watching the highlights through earlier, and they did a fantastic race in this race. They controlled it very well. Unfortunately, I was in this race because after a few, I thought, I better retire from racing now. But unfortunately, I was in this race, and I came up behind one of them who was after I just pitted, and I was trying to gain a few spots. So I was a bit angry with the penalties that I was accumulating. So I was trying to get around, and they did a great bit of teamwork to obviously get the faster driver of those two ahead, and then keep me behind at the same time. And then I had to go for a cheeky little dive at the end, somewhere in the midpoint of the race. So it was, yeah, these guys. I've seen Twan come back, and he's now in the Racing Point. He did a great job when he returned for the last few races or so. Unfortunately, Bogan can't come back just yet, but hopefully he will do maybe in season 3, maybe further down the line. But yeah, we'll see how that one goes.
I gotta say, I'm glad you brought that up because I think in Bahrain, you and Boden had a bit of a scuffle there as well. Boden is one of the most difficult drivers to overtake in the ALR field, which I gotta say was brilliant, and it was a fantastic team lineup in the Mercedes team, and they were very strong in the beginning of the season. They had a couple of tough times, didn't they, when Twining and Boden bowed out, but they're back on the up now, of course, as we'll get into that a bit later on. As just having a look at the Australian Grand Prix as well, we just seen Dan Murphy retire from the race, and he was having a very difficult day in Australia as well. Also, the retirements so far, we have Slav, Gorilla, and Grillsy, as you just mentioned, those out of the race as well. And of course, last season's runner-up Hunter was having an appalling day in Australia, as Hunter didn't take part in many races after Australia. He bowed out at the end of Azerbaijan, unfortunately. But there's one man that I'm looking at right now, Nosey, and that's Gunnar. He just had an incredible overtake on Boden. Just when you was talking about Boden as well.
Yeah.
Incredible.
No, I think he started the season really well. Obviously, he's a reliable racer. He always turns up and he puts in a good shift. He's got some really good points at various races in the season as well. This one included, I think. And so yeah, I think he's a bit of fun as well. So he's good fun in the chats, even when he's on Facebook ban. So we'll have to hopefully in season 3 we'll have to see what car he comes out in. But hopefully he'll do another cracking job in whatever team he's assigned to.
Indeed, and of course, then we got the old guard as well, Mr. Elite, who's very much was ever present in season 1, and he's having a strong race as well. In third position there, sat there as we're just has got the 2 Mercedes there just battling out wheel to wheel as well.
This is the incident. This is the one with me behind them. I'm trying to get through and I can't because there's 2 of them now blocking the whole track. But back to what you said about Bogan as well. He does. He's a clean driver, really clean driver. I know me and him had a bit of a coming together in Bahrain, like you said earlier. But yeah, he's a really clean driver. He's a dependable driver. Gets some good points, and he can keep the car under control pretty well. So can Twan, and I think Twan's actually the faster of the 2 of them. But yeah, it's just strategy on this day.
It was, and that's a very important point there, Knowles. His strategy, because this is the first race of 2019, which everyone was a bit green there, wasn't they? And the strategy was all up in the air. And we see here, look at that, we got medium, softs, hard tires all out there on the track alone. That's a fantastic overtake, Knowles. Well done. You can see we got hard, medium, and soft out there. How was you approaching this race then? Because surely it was just up in the air. How did you go about it? Did you do any testing? Did you do any practice before the race?
I think we probably did. Not that in depth practice wise. You do a couple of laps on time trial or something like that. But I think the first part of the first race of the season, the first thing you need to do is get the setup right, or as right as you can get it, basically. Nobody knows how quick everybody else is going to be. Obviously time trial gives a slight indication, but it's never that reliable. And obviously it's not race pace, it's just 1 lap pace, so it can all vary in the race as well. So I think the strategy for Australia is, if you wanted to do it one stop, it's medium then hard strategy, or all the way around. So I think the guys on the softs, I mean, they could make a sort of soft to hard stint and do a 1 stop that way. I believe. But yeah, this track, it varies on tracks as well. Obviously, the strategy. I think some of them are. You can adapt a bit more. You can put different tyres on maybe even do 2 stops as well, which can work out a bit quicker than the 1 stop. But yeah, I think Australia medium, well, on a dry race anyway, for the whole race, it's mediums to hards, just to be just to be secure that you're going to get through to the end of the race without any incidents, any punctures and things like that.
Your sort of show on this highlight reel there is that we just seen you and Boda once again locking wheels. It's fantastic racing, and what way to start season 2 of ALR. It really is good stuff. Just going up and down the field, then of course there's been 2 ever consistent drivers that have done really well throughout the season, and that is Farfan Jonathan Cox there. Was a championship challenger all the way up until Brazil before mathematically he was out of the championship. But he's been ever present for 21 races. Farf has been ever present all the way up until Abu Dhabi, and this first race there he was right up there battling away with Blas, and he was looking a strong contender, wasn't he, in the first 2 races in Australia and Bahrain?
Yeah, I thought Farf might be one of the ones. Well, he was thereabouts in previous seasons as well, in other leagues too, and always battling for the lead, battling for big points. So I thought after this race where he won it, and obviously Bahrain as well where he won, I thought it might be the title was on for him. And obviously Jonathan, like you said, I can't remember how many races it was. I think it was. We might see in the next highlight reel actually. It was sort of 5 races or so. He was on the podium in a row from the beginning of the season, which obviously didn't harm his championship chances, did it? So he was unlucky in a couple of races to not score as many points as he could have, and then that obviously determined his championship position in the end, didn't it?
It did, but up until that point, Jonathan at the beginning of the season was definitely Mr. Consistent. Remember, he won that incredible final race in Japan, didn't he? Where he was the first man, as far as I remember, to beat Nigel in a straight fight. So that just shows the calibre of the driver, doesn't it, Jonathan Cox? And looking forward to seeing what he can do next year. Because as I said, he's been ever present this season. I think he's the only driver to race in every single race this season. So well done to Jonathan there. Big props there, and really consistency was indeed the key at the earlier stage of the season. It did go a bit off for Jonathan Cox. We'll touch on that a bit later as well, because we got some incidents to cover in this incredible season review. As we're just watching Farf and Blas battling for the lead now, and I got to say, this time Knowles, I was getting a bit of a sweat on here. This was getting incredible. Look at him; he was pushing him through turn 5, and floating under the trees there. I got to say, I was a little disappointed that Blas bowed out after just 1 race. But at least his ALR stats are fantastic, with his average points of being 18. But I got to say, him and Farf were fantastic in this race.
Yeah, I think they even with Jonathan, maybe it was back to the new game where Jonathan didn't have the setups just there yet, or something like that. But these 2 just disappeared off the pretty much from the first lap, didn't they? And they were constantly battling, whether it was through strategy or on track, like we're seeing now, throughout the race. And I think it was due to penalties in the end. We're coming up to. We're on lap 21 now, but we're coming up to the final lap soon. It's a bit of contact there, but it was always close between these 2, and they were just controlling it from the beginning, weren't they?
It was really impressive stuff, I've got to say. And look, to be 20 seconds or thereabouts in front, as we're just showing a Granty going up the inside of Boden there. But yeah, to be 20 seconds in front of Jonathan is just unheard of, isn't it? Especially these days, isn't it? But anyway, we've got another new face on the grid, and that is a Granty boy. And my goodness me, you notice that he's not in his yellow rocket at the moment; he's in his Williams. Before he transfers over to the Renault later on in the season. But I got to say that as Steve Gunu had an incredible start to the season. Unfortunately, just faced the wrong way in turn 12, the infamous turn 12. But Granty, going back to Granty, he was a fantastic season. Granty has been, and of course we'll tell you later on whether he can win the big one or not. But he's of course one half of the constructors champions as well this season. But it just shows incredible stuff. But what was your take on Granty? Granty, because he had a very difficult start to his life in the ALR. In this race, I think he was involved in a couple of little incidents, but in Bahrain, I think he had an incredible qualifying session and came undone in the first couple of laps there.
Yeah, he got a bit unlucky, I think. In the beginning on the first lap of this one, I'm pretty sure he qualified in the midfield or near the end of the points, put it that way. And again in Bahrain, he did really well, but I think there was an incident in going into the first corner that actually ruined his race for that one as well. So he was, I know it was a bit of a difficult start of the season, like you said, for Granty, but he's pulled through and got quite a few points since then, hasn't he? So he's, well, as you said, he's won the constructors title for Renault. Along with NUF1, and he's just, I think after the switch to Renault, he just came back, focused on his racing again, and just started banging in the big points.
Indeed, and we were just sitting on the stream there as well as it all went a bit awry for you there, Nosey. I like to bring it up, of course, you know me.
God dear, I don't know what happened there. I think there was that Ferrari backmarker that he let me pass down the main straight and then decided just to drive into me when I was going around turn 1, so I was a bit annoyed with that as well, to be fair. And then well, you said I know you said on stream I was taking my frustrations out on Mr. Elite there, but it was just my breaking point, and I think he braked a bit early, that's all. But yeah, so he gained the place back at the end as we're on the last lap now. So here you go, Favre wins, and then Favre comes across the line, only a couple of seconds behind him. But yeah, I think Mr. Elite jumps up the standings there. Obviously, I don't finish in 5th. I don't deserve to finish in 5th after that race anyway. But so yeah, we'll see what happens now as the rest of the guys cross the line. Jonathan, I know, is guaranteed to get 3rd on this one.
Yeah, so I got to say, overall, that first race was an incredible race. I really enjoyed it personally, and I just remember watching after the race of how big the gap was. I was incredibly surprised. Yeah, it went down to 15 seconds there, but my goodness me. And we've also seen you just taking a lovely old lunge on Granty as well. I tell you what, she was on fire there, Nosey. I think that's really lit a fire under your behind there, didn't it?
I was raging with that one, to be fair, mate. I had a good start and I was doing well, and then the race sort of fell apart. As you can see, put it in the wall. I don't want to remember this one. I'm watching it again now and I'm thinking, thank God I stopped racing. But there you go, Mr. Elite gets the 5th position back anyway. Oh no, he doesn't. Sorry, Bogan comes through based on penalties, obviously. But yeah, it was a really good. Well, I think it was a successful first race of the season. I think a couple of retirees retired due to technical difficulties and things like that, so it wasn't anything to do with anything on track. But yeah, let's move on to Spain.
Indeed we are, and Spain, then I got to say, this was my favourite one, as you can see. Murphy getting his one of his 3 pole positions so far this year, and I got to say that he had an appalling start, didn't he? And look at that, the superstar of Emerson. This is only his 2nd race in ALR. He came banging Azerbaijan, didn't he, Emerson? My goodness me, what a talent he is, Naughty.
Well, he's an absolute great racer. I don't think he needs to be clean, because he doesn't have to worry about anybody really, because he's always miles ahead of them. So I haven't really. Well, we had a few, myself and him had a few battles at the start of his ALR career. Yeah, and it was there wasn't any problems with him. He's a great racer, absolutely rapid. So yeah, he really just controls races, I think. And although he didn't get pole position, I managed to pip him to the post in Baku. There was absolutely no way I was keeping him behind him for however many laps in Baku. I don't think I even managed it for the first 3. So yeah, after that he just disappeared, and it looks like it's similar here.
And I must say though that what is your take on because I think when Emerson came in, Farfu was high flying after China, wasn't he? Of course, 2 wins in Australia and Bahrain, and a very strong result in China as well. But do you reckon that Emerson just kind of shook Farfu a bit, or do you feel that get everyone just caught up and have got to grips with the game. How was your take on Farf's dip in performances?
I think I don't think he had a. I don't think this was a dip in performance as such. I think, like you said, everybody sort of got to grips with the game, started to understand the setups a bit better. I think Farf started at the. He started in 14th in this race in Spain, so he did a great job. He's already up to 7th in the highlights, but. Yeah, so I think everybody's. It wasn't Farf doing anything wrong. I think it was just the game had been out sort of 6-7 weeks by now when we got to this round, and then the performance of the understanding for everybody was just catching up a bit more. I think maybe I don't know whether Farf had got a good setup from somebody, or if he'd been practicing as well that long to get that setup in Australia, but he'd obviously he'd somehow done better than the other guys in that race, obviously, to get a car that was performing that well, and the same for Bahrain, really, wasn't it? He absolutely smashed that race as well. So I think I think everybody's catching up. Everyone's getting a better understanding of the game now, apart from me. And Emerson coming in as well. I don't think it impacted Farf in terms of on-track racing. I just thought Emerson just started blowing people out of the way to get a pole position or something, or to get more points than him in a race is an achievement in itself, isn't it?
Oh, it is indeed, and I got to say I completely agree with you there. But I do like to ask the tough questions, and I'm glad that you're here to answer them. Of course, as well, you touched on the Farfare start from the back of the field. I think that I think he just enjoys to qualify down the order. He seems to have some incredible, inspiring races when he's near the back. But I'm not sure how much that helped him later on in the title. As just watching all this action there going down the main straight. And in terms of Spain as well, of course, this is the first European race of the season now. I think this is the first race where Twang really does struggle. I think this is unfortunately one of his last races as well before he has to bow out for a few races in the Mercedes. But yeah, this is this track in Spain then at Norsley. I got to say, sometimes there's a bit of procession on the actual as Twang has gone into the wall there, and I think that was his final race for several races. I think he returned back in Mexico with the racing point. So unfortunately for Twang, up until that point, he was doing a fantastic season. He was in the top 5 of the World Championship, and he was very consistent as well. And really keeping the front guys on his side, but unfortunately Twang had to bow out there. You notice that there's a new name in the classification as well. We're just on board then with Farf, and I think that this was overtaking the season, wasn't it?
Oh no, not this one. I don't want to watch this one. I can't. I've got to close my eyes.
Oh, it's a thing of beauty.
Is it over yet?
Yeah, it's over.
Oh, thank God.
I should have said yeah, it was over when it was still going on. That was a thing of beauty. That was from Farf. It was beautiful. But yeah, just going back to a couple of the new names there. We have Silent Shifting, who returned in China, and my goodness me, what a return as well. Of course, he had 2 races in season 1, didn't he? In Germany and Hungary, but he returned in China, and he just smashed it, didn't he? With a great win in China.
Yeah, he did. Well, it was like you said, it was his first race back, and he puts it on pole and disappears. And I thought, well, this guy's pretty good, isn't he? And well, that was before Emerson came about, so we didn't really compare the two. But no, he did a fantastic job in China as well. And I think consistency is the key for him. Just keeping that up and getting the points in, and then eventually he'll. He jumped up the table at the end of this season when he came back into the car full time. So yeah, it's just consistency for him and getting those points, seeing where it goes. And hopefully, I'm sure he'll be happy if he's not in Team Williams next season. So
yeah, so it's been a bit of a grumble to Team Williams this season, hasn't it? It seems to have been a bit of a team to avoid, hasn't it? Yeah, just going back to the track layout then here in Spain. Now, I know we're 26 laps into it. We haven't even touched on the track layout because of it's incredible how different it is from Australia to Spain here. But yeah, Spain it's a quality track to drive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a that's a bit of a weird overtake there from Grati. Yeah, it's one of those tracks. It's really well, I don't know what the game says because it ranks them all by easy, medium, and hard, doesn't it? I don't know what the rank is for Spain on this one, but it's actually a difficult track, especially that turn 2, like traction-wise. It's quite difficult, but it's very setup reliant. You can't just whack it on the straight and get going, like somewhere like Baku. But you've got to be in complete control and concentration throughout the whole race, because then one small slip up and you'll be spinning, or you'll lose the traction in the corner coming out the corner or something like that. So yeah, it's one of those ones that's, and the strategy, sorry, is more in terms of tyres. It's more towards mediums and then hards. I think most people qualified on the mediums in this one, or qualified in Q2 on the mediums. As you can see on the tower on the right, on the left rather, everybody sort of started on mediums or switched from mediums to hards, so there was no softs used in this race, I don't think.
No, it's very little red on that side, isn't there? So a softs was definitely something to stay away from. And we're just in a Bowden with an incredibly aggressive overtake there. And again, then we've got Nigel, of course, our defending champion. He made his return a race before. It didn't go too well for Nigel, did it? In Azerbaijan, but in Spain here, he's had a good old scrap as well with Bowden there. It was great to see Nigel back in the car, really, and I'm hoping that season 3 can have a proper defensive title. The first 3 races was definitely he was unavailable. And Emerson comes through to win his second race of the season there, with Grant. He finished in second. Well, he didn't, because Murphy finished second there. Murphy, I tell you what, this man just doesn't get any penalties, does he? And
it's quite annoying sometimes when you're racing against him. You're battling away and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to finish here, and then, oh no, he's jumped up because you had two time penalties or something like that. It's one of those ones where if you keep it clean and you don't get any, keep it clean with other drivers and respect your other drivers, keep it clean, don't track extend, don't get any penalties, you're going to gain places at the finish anyway, because people have penalties all over the place, and it was a great drive from Emerson and Dan in that race.
It was, and as we move on to round 6 in Monaco, half a championship this is, isn't it? As the old legends used to say, and look how narrow that straight is. But once again, Nolte, you're on pole position. Of course, you had 2 pole positions in your half a season appearance in ALR. I got to say, you was becoming a bit of a pole king there. I tell you what, I love the Monaco Underlights this season. Really good stuff as well. And you can see then it's all chaos going up the hill. But yeah, Paul, I tell you what, Knowles, he was quality in qualifying. Always we get a bit dicey at the top of the hill.
Yeah, it's something about the I don't know what it is. It's something about street circuits. I just get a good time around them somehow. So yeah, Baku was on pole, wasn't I think, and then. And this one, can't remember, I didn't race in Singapore, obviously. But yeah, I think, for some reason I just, I don't mind the street circuits as much as some other people. It's a bit more of a risk and reward thing, isn't it? Especially around somewhere like here, where we've just seen, where a bit of a wall, or any wall, can just take you out of the race.
It can, and we're just sitting there crazy at man there, clipping the C French chicane, and of course we had a safety car after one lap, because that's the nature of Monaco, isn't it, really? When you were preparing for Monaco, did you ever take into account safety cars and thinking about what to do with strategy?
Honestly, no. I was just trying to finish the race, mate.
That's a lot. I've got to say that we had 2 retirements in 3 laps, so it's a very difficult thing to do in of itself there. But then you see we're now getting ready to go again, because you're controlling the pace there beautifully there, Norsey, but then we have all sorts of shenanigans at the back there. How difficult is it not to crash into the car in front under a safety car?
It is, well, I'd say in the game it's probably more difficult than in real life, because you need to, you're obviously trying to manage, if you're on a controller or even if you're on a wheel or something like that, you're trying to manage all of the menus and things with the ERS and the fuel, etc. So we've got Emerson's overtake coming up, I think. Here is it? Oh no, I'm just ghosting. But so you're trying to manage. So when you're on the safety car, obviously most people turn the ERS down completely off, and then fuel into lean. Obviously save some fuel, save some ERS whilst you're going around at no speed. Obviously that cools the tyres down, so you need to warm them up on the last lap as well. So when the safety cars start to come in, everyone's trying to warm their tyres up, trying to get the fuel sorted, and trying to get the ERS set back to what they want when it gets going again. So around Monaco, when you're trying to do that, where you've got a wall every 2 metres, and other cars, 20 other cars on the track too at the same time, it's yeah, it's not a surprise that there's a few bumps and scrapes coming along, unfortunately.
Oh my goodness me. I was just sat there listening to you then, Knowles, and I was just confused, just like listening to it. So how do these drivers have to... Whoa, is side shifted and Nigel there have a bit of a bump and ride there. I was just getting confused of just listening to you there, Knowles. I know you're one man who is knows how to explain everything, and George, you need to explain something clear to me anyway. But that was incredible how the drivers have got to do all that whilst trying not to crash into the car in front. I wonder why it happens a lot of the time then in safety car sides. It happens all around in every other league as well. And again,
here we go. Sorry, watch this. This is great. another one round the outside on me. That's perfect.
I gotta say, Nosey, you had a lot of overtakes of the season. Oh, but then Emerson gets it completely wrong in Casino Square, doesn't he? And that does definitely compromise him. But yeah, I think I gotta say this was a bit like Mansell in Senna around here at this stage of the race. I was really enjoying this. I gotta say, I don't think you was enjoying this as much as me, Nosey. I gotta say, but the pressure was almighty on you here.
Well,
but,
like I said,
you was keeping it clean.
Like I said earlier, Emerson's rapid, and I think obviously only because of this circuit was I keeping him behind me at the time. If it was any other circuit, he'd be way past me already. But yeah, it was just working out because obviously there's not many places to overtake around Monaco unless you're going to go for a big dive or a risky move. So yeah, that was genuinely the only reason why he was still behind me at this point of the race. 9 laps in, he had a look at me there. But yeah, it's just there's no way I was going to keep him behind for the whole race, and we'll see later down the line what happens. But I think the other person I was going to comment about on this one, are only 10 laps in, but is again silent shifting has done a great job. But Renzo, again new to ALR, hadn't raced before with us in the league, and he's come in and Mr. Elite. Sorry, everybody's doing really well there. Oh, I just thought he retired. No, he's up to 3rd, sorry. So, usually when I talk about them, they retire. There we go, silent shifting's retired. But yeah, but Renzo, he came in and I think he qualified pretty well and did a great job in this race. I think he got a bit unlucky later on in the race, but he was really solid performer in this one.
He was indeed. I'm glad you touched on that, Renzo, there, because Renzo has had an up and down season, of course, a bit inconsistent.
Oh God. Oh dear, don't watch that.
Oh, I tell you what, that was a beautiful piece of driving there. But I think that up until that point, I think you had a flawless race in terms of what was going on. And the strategy was mixed up from both of you incredibly well. You was doing the opposites to each other, which was brilliant. But I think that race, that incident there between yourself and Emerson, I think handed the race to Nigel. Would you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. There was well, obviously you see there when myself and Emerson were in the pits, Granty's 20 seconds plus behind me. So yeah, it was going to be one of us three who won it, and obviously yeah, like you said, the ascendancy went to Nigel after that incident straight away because both of us had to pit.
Yeah, and of course it was an extra 5 odd seconds for a damaged front wing as well, and you just magically appeared behind Emerson there, so that just shows the quality of Codemasters there. But yeah, Nigel has now had a 28 odd second lead in front of you two now, which basically did hand Nigel the win, but it still doesn't make too much. Well, you can't take it away from Nigel though, because I think he had to be there in the first place, and Nigel was showing some incredible stuff. Remember, this is his first outing for the Alfa Romeo team, where he became a full-fledged ALR driver again after making two reserve drives for the Red Bull. Just in at Laggy there, because Laggy made his debut earlier on in the season, didn't he? And in the Ferrari, I think it's more of a tough race for Laggy, but Laggy is we'll touch on Laggy a bit later on as well, because he had some incredible drives. We were just on board with Renzo, and I think this was where it all went a bit pear-shaped for Renzo, as he had damage to his wing there, which was such a shame, because up to that point he was 5th, and he wasn't really being challenged as much, but it just shows that you can't relax at all in Monaco, can you?
No, it's one of those ones. Well, like you said, the points are half the championship in a way, because if you finish it, you've done a good job either way, wherever you finish. It's one of those tracks that it was very famous, obviously, but and you know more about it than I do. To be fair, you could probably talk about Monaco for days, but if you finish it, especially in a league race, if you finish it, as we see everyone crossing the line here now, obviously Nigel with the win and Emerson came in second. It's a great feat to get over the line after so many laps, 39 laps around Monaco as well. So yeah, shout out here to obviously Mr. Elite who started from 18th in the back there and finished 7th. So he did a great job. And we got quite a few of the names that towards the end of the championship were scoring some points, like Granty in there and Jonathan Cox in the points as well.
And you notice that there will be a familiar name called Faxland who will be in the silver draw as well. So so of course that was one man to be looking out for the future. Definitely looking forward to see what Faxland can do. And then we turn our attention to round 7 in Canada. And my goodness me, what a race this was! This is 35 laps around Montreal. Montreal is usually a fan favourite anyway, but it was a very miserable Canadian Grand Prix, wasn't it, Dolce?
Yeah. So well, the sun didn't want to come out for this one, did it? So everybody started on the Intercars, I believe it was. So plays havoc with the strategy. I think everybody, well, when everybody join the session, then you see what the weather's going to be like in the race, and there's a few moans and groans as usual. I know I was probably groaning a lot, but so it just puts more pressure on car control, getting your wet setup right, and obviously making sure that you keep it clean in the race. Emphasise keeping it clean in the race a bit more as well.
We've seen the Silent Shift was on pole position there, which we just watched the dramatic first lap crash. We're on board with Fireshot here. Boy, he's a character, isn't he? But talking about his teammate, Silent Shifted, he was in qualifying. I remember being absolutely astonished by that lap there from Fireshot. Mr. Lee is unfortunately he joined a bit late there, but look at that, getting very dicey between Wishbone, which is this his first race, and I think it was Maxi. But Silent Shifted, he was absolutely incredible in qualifying, but the race there with the rain there, it just didn't go his way for Silent. And you will see in this highlights video that he just drops down the order, which is a shame for Silent, because if it was a dry race, I reckon he would definitely have given you and Emerson a run for your money.
Yeah, I think definitely, like you said, when he came in China and just surprised us all there, I think one of these laps, well, one of the qualifying laps was the same sort of thing, wasn't it? And like you said, he was. I think there was a couple of people in here using a dry based setup, which meant obviously in the corners it was a bit useless, but down the straight, down the back straight here, you can see Farth battling with it's Farth and Silent really battling, and Farth trying to get past, but there's no chance he can get past on the back straight because Silent has so much speed down straight. So it's a sort of it's a mix between do you want to be safe and secure going around the corners, making sure there's no back end loss and that sort of thing, or in Silent's case, do you want to just blitz it? And he was doing a great job actually. I mean, obviously he started on pole with his great qualifying lap, but I think throughout this race he starts losing momentum because whether it's just due to his driving style or something like that, but the cars behind him at the moment started just getting in gradually through the main sector 2, that sort of thing, where the corners are quite tight, and his setup just didn't really work for him in that race, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was unfortunate for Silent Shifted. There's a couple of drivers there that when you see a wet weather race, there's a lot. You did say there's a lot of groans there. It's a wet weather driving is a bit of an art really, and I think that it's tough in its own right to race in the league. But when it's wet as well, it's so difficult. And I think another man that struggles in the wet was John Cox there, who unfortunately is down in 13th. This is one of his more worst races of the season. And up until that point, in practice, I remember Jonathan being very confident in this race. But as soon as the rain came, it just didn't go his way for Jonathan, which is a big shame. I think it went wrong in qualifying as well, as they jumped across the World Champions. I'm sure there's a bit of debris that flicks up there, or it's just the dirt on my screen. So it's come down to turn one then. I got to say then, this battle between you and Silent there, you were so much quicker at this stage. In terms of wet wear driving, how confident are you in the wet there? You did. You were talking about you didn't really fancy yourself, or you had a bit of a groan about this wet wear. But my goodness me, I'll say this is your best race of the season.
Yeah, I hate the wet. So yeah, it was. Every time you see a wet race, everybody's a bit. I think most people are a bit upset with it, really. I think. Well, the reason for that, obviously, I think is everyone's practiced with their dry setups and put their time trial efforts into dry running, that sort of thing. And then Codemaster springs a surprise, and it's heavy rain for the rest of the race, sort of thing, for the whole thing, which is usually a nightmare. But I think, yeah, as this race went on, like you said, that sort of went away for me, and I was getting a bit more confident in the conditions. So I knew my car the setup was pretty good for this race itself.
It got a bit dicey there between you and Silent there. My goodness me, I don't think you appreciate that too much. Farf, sorry, yeah, Farf, and yeah, you're both in Red Bull cars technically, aren't you? No, it's getting a bit dicey there between between Silent. I was going to say you again, between Silent and Farf. I don't think Farf would have appreciated that. That was a bit of an extreme cut there, or is that just hard racing?
I think it was just a bit of an incident. I think put it down to everyone's these two battling for a long time, and the conditions not helping that out as well. So I think nothing got damaged in that one, and there's no massive incident. So they could both carry on racing as normal, and yeah, just gave me a bit more momentum to get on the back of both of them again. So let me catch up a bit more. So.
I gotta say, I was enjoying this battle as well. Look, this was second down to 6 here. Really good stuff indeed. And as we just flicked down the field, there's action all over the show here in Montreal. But yeah, Silent did definitely produce a bit of a good old train there behind him. As I was just watching Renzo and Grad there battle away as well. And Farf, I think he doesn't get through here. Look at this, though. It's incredible how Silent just goes around the outside there and just keeps the momentum there. That is what he was so good at, and I think you hit the nail on the head beautifully well earlier on, though, about the dry setup and how him being so quick. But Farfa finally got through here. But I bet he was a very frustrated man.
Well, I'm sure. Well, I think we both were. Here's where he went. Well, I think Silent went a bit wrong, like I said earlier on in which one was it? Spain, I think now. About consistency, he got overtaken and he was pushing so hard to get past that it opened the gap up for me to go around on the outside there. Obviously, it doesn't really make a difference because on the back straight he blitzes back past me. But it's just that consistency, keeping in the right frame of mind when you're going around. You've got Emerson there already, who's over 9 seconds ahead of second place. And that's purely because he's got a good car, he's got the setup that he needs, but that's purely because the second, third and fourth have been battling for so long, pretty much from the start, that he's just been able to just carry on as normal out front and get that and gain that lead.
That's a very good. That's another point you've made up here, and that's why you paid the big bucks, Nolze. You're making some incredible points here. Just about the battling as well. 9 seconds just from battling there. So that's not down to pure pace, is it? Then it's just you guys all losing time because you're having a good old battle with Silent. I bet that was frustrating, wasn't it? Just watching Emerson just walk away.
Well, at the time I didn't really notice it. I don't think, because I was, like you said, I was involved in the battle, so I was a bit busy being preoccupied with it. So I think it was just trying to I was saving some fuel, saving some EMS because there's no need to put loads of fuel in the wet anyway. I'm just biding my time really trying to get past, and you see, well, we're on lap 20, well, we've just jumped to lap 30, sorry, on my screen. I got up to P2, got by far, I think, after the pit stops, and then started reeling in Emerson, and I thought, well, what's he doing? Is there something wrong with his car or something? Because I was gaining quite a lot of time over him. If there had been another few laps, hopefully I would have caught him and would have tried to overtake him, but we'll have to wait and see for another race.
It was definitely a grandstand finish there, and you notice when we jumped from up to 30, you see that Murphy's name is slowly going up the list as well. Murphy, I think, is becoming a wet weather specialist. Well, he's quite good in the dry, isn't he, these days? But my goodness me, in the wet as well, he just walks on water, doesn't he? Just a quick shout out to Sam as well. This is, I think, the first race. This is Sam's second race of his league career. Remember, because he was very green when he made his debut in Monaco. But this is a start of a run of very good results there. Unfortunately, the second half of the season doesn't go his way. But a big shout out for Sam there, and I think he's been ever present more or less, and it's great to see him in the league. Emerson there taking what is another win. I think that was his third victory there for Emerson there. Impressive stuff. And as you said, Nosey, a couple more laps there, it would have been an absolute grandstand finish. Congratulations to Wishbone as well for finishing third on his debut. And look, Murphy there once again there showed his clean, well, I would say clean, as we did have a couple of penalties in fourth position then. But I got the weather was very unusual in Canada. It was just like rain all the way through, which for me I prefer mixed weather conditions where it just makes it slightly more entertaining there. But was you expecting it to dry up, or did you just look at the weather forecast and think that's it? It's going to be like
rain? We knew it was going to be wet for the whole thing. So we'll see some further strategy calls and things like that in the later races. But on to Hungary, where we've got another new face, Dan Lutonen. I think he there's a McLaren and a Mercedes flying off in the background there, but yeah, Dan was a new reserve driver. Was a friend of one of our other drivers, Maxi. But yeah, he didn't get a good start off that one, and allowed Jonathan Cox to jump into P1, which I think he pretty much stayed there for the rest of his race, didn't he?
He did. I got to say, he's a very much Lewis Hamilton-esque around this circuit. He just dominates. He just wanders away. Up until this race, Dan Lutonen had 2 race wins and a DNF, and unfortunately this would be his spoiler alert. This would be his second DNF for Dan Lutonen there. But his rate in ALR was a 50% strike rate in terms of 2 wins, 2 DNFs. But he was a very quick driver. But he just when he was in the mid pack, it was very difficult, which is similar to a lot of drivers, isn't it? Really, if you're a very quick driver, but in the mid pack, it's racecraft, isn't it? Which can really hurt you. As we're watching Emerson here, I think that, a big old smash out for Lutonen there. I've watched these races over and over again. I still get excited. Emerson up into 6th position, and this is I think a run of races where he has a pretty poor qualifying and has to come through the field then, which I think is good for us, because that's why the championship went down to the wire in Abu Dhabi, and there's one of our new reserve drivers, Surti, who made it entertaining for us, but I don't think the other drivers were too keen on this young man.
Yeah, we'll forget about him. We don't talk about him ever again. So yeah, we'll move on to somebody else. What I was just going to go back to there before the Lutonen incident, and I think Granty got involved in it, unfortunately, was that the 2 title contenders, Emerson and Granty, were 6th and 8th or something like that, or 6th and 7th rather, and battling away going into turn 4. And there's been you see it in these videos, but there's been races where one of them dominates and one of them doesn't. Well, one of them might fall down, they might retire, or they might not get many points, and then it flips and it's the other way around. Or, like I just said, they're right in the midfield, or middle of the points rather, and they're battling each other. So I think both of these guys are equally really skilled at obviously driving the car. and it's just down to who has come out on top at the end of the season.
Yeah, and talking of that, I remember Nigel won the title last season. I think he had just over 300 points. This season we're not going to be near that total. But I think that just has been incredibly competitive this season. It's been really enjoyable, I must say. We've seen a shot of Farfare going into the wall at turn 4, I believe it was, and I think that at this stage Farfare is just on a downward spiral there, isn't it? Momentum is key, really, isn't it? And just, I think for Farfare it's just a downward slope. Do you agree with that?
I think he had a few races where he wasn't liking it, was he? But no, I think he's been a consistent performer as well in most of the races. He's always been a driver that's capable of getting some good points, getting on the podium as well. So yeah, maybe next season he can because obviously this season was the beginning of this new game. So next season, season 3, will be carrying on 2019. We'll be able to fit in another calendar before the next game comes out. So I think we'll see again, like I said earlier, with the gap closing to Farf at the beginning of the season. In season 2, I think we might see the gap closing to Emerson and Granty and Jonathan in season 3, because it's going to be flipped, if you know what I mean.
Oh, that's exciting stuff. I must admit, I do enjoy my Christmas lunch, but I'm more excited now about January the 13th is where it's all going to kick off. Again, 13th is silver. you got to. I get so confused now. It's all going off in ALR, which is fantastic, isn't it? Just shows the success we've had in such a short period of time as well. It's incredible, isn't it? Just going up and down the results, that is, we've seen a fire shot as well there. Unfortunately, if he can get his consistency going, he is a very strong driver as well. Similar to Simon Shifter in a way there, but I'm not sure if Simon will appreciate me saying that. It's really bad the luxury of being in their parties.
I think both those guys, like I said, they're both really quick drivers. And you can see that in some of the results they've got. But when they're in the midfield, when they're at the back, when they're starting in the back for some reason, you've got to realise that some of the drivers in front of you aren't going to be as quick as you are. And that's where they've fallen down, I think, is they've been trying to get through the field too quickly. They've been too aggressive, and that's caused problems. But when we've seen it, like I said earlier, with China, with Silent, with I think it's Russia and things like that for Fireshot. They're capable of putting it on pole, and they're capable of winning races. But it's that consistency in the race. That's all you need. And even if you're not battling for the win, but you're being consistent, you're going to get big points, because other people are going to be doing the same thing.
I got to say that's it's not just them two, though, is it? It's a lot of top drivers. We're just watching Newton in here battling and getting very close, up close and personal with Surrey here. But I think it's like a lot of top drivers, isn't it? Where they're rushing through the field too much, and they need to pick their spots. I feel says the guy that struggles to even go in a straight line. But when I'm on my own, but I feel that it's a trait that a lot of top drivers that are so quick, they just rush coming through the field, and that could potentially win or lose you a championship. We've seen this with Farf as well, and a couple of other drivers. Also, a big shout out to Crazy Hitman. I think that of course he's had some issues with his steering wheel in all sorts this season, but he's never given up, Crazy, has he? And I think you have that as well in the past as well, but I think this is probably one of his stronger races. He's very he's always here for the races, so his attendance is absolutely fantastic, isn't it? I sound like a school teacher there, but I think Crazy Hitman's had a very difficult season, hasn't he, with just 2019 in general. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think he started off. He didn't start off the season with us, I don't think, did he? But he came in quite early on anyway. But no, he was. And in fairness, on season 1, he was getting some points. He was doing really well. Got onto this game and for some reason the wheel settings or something was completely off, and basically causing him to be about 3 seconds slower than anybody in the field per lap, which was a bit of a nightmare for him, obviously. We got that resolved, and he started getting some good performances like this one. Yeah, it was a shame he had to leave ALR due to personal reasons, but hopefully one day again he'll be back, and yeah, we'll see him racing with us again.
Definitely, I hope so as well, because I've got to say he's a nice guy, Crazy It Man is. I've had the pleasure of speaking with him once or twice, but yeah, and yeah, he's a very good guy indeed. So yeah, good wishes for Crazy Man, and hopefully we'll see him back in the car in the not too distant future. Yeah, to just touching on this track then, Nosey, and the Hungara ring in general, it's a bit of a dust bowl, isn't it? Around here, it's used to be described as Monaco without the walls. In terms of it's so tight and twisty, it's a bit like it's a really big go-kart track, really, isn't it? But how was in terms of strategy? In this track in general, how would you approach this one then? It looks like no one's keen on the soft tires again, is it? It looks like it's all medium and hard.
Well, off the start there was, I know I was on the soft tyres, but what happened, I think there was either a virtual safety car or a safety car around lap 8 or lap 9, which is probably 4 or 5 laps before the pit window for the softs. So I made the mistake of pitting for medium tyres, because the strategy for me was going to be softs then mediums, and obviously having to pit earlier meant that I put the medium tyres on earlier than I planned to. But some guys here, as you can see, they have used the softs, or they're going to use the softs, I think, in terms of they're putting the medium tyre on and switching later on, or they're using the hard tyre to get that durability and just make sure they're a bit more guaranteed or shored up in the race to keep going in that sense, rather than getting any punctures, which we'll see later.
And yeah, so strategy is key around here as well, because I'd say that it's very difficult to overtake around here. You've only got one, well, anyway, easy overtaking spot. It's just one opportunity, which is down here, the back straight into turn 1. So I bet that also plays with your strategy as well, isn't it? And thinking about the long game, and look at Granty and Laggy there, like giving him a bit of a squeeze out, Michael Schumacher-esque possibly. And look at that, we haven't touched on this man yet, Stringy. Of course, Stringy made his debut halfway through the season, didn't he? And he had some incredible battles as well. Stringy has. He's in the early part of his ALR career, he was very consistent indeed. I think the more the season comes to the end, then, and the less he's fighting for, the more he's took risks. I think Stringy has. But next season, he's going to be an incredible teammate to someone, or possibly even better than that, because he's consistent, isn't he, Nosey? He's a points getter, which is what you need in any team.
Yeah, exactly what I said on earlier. Is this guy knows how to get some points and keep it clean during the races. Obviously, in midfield is going to be some incidents here and there, but he knows how to, like I said, he can get those points. He can get higher than he has at the moment, where he can also be on the podium here and there as well. So he's going to be one of the drivers next season that you'd want in your team, because you know what you're going to get from him, and you're probably going to get some more of that as well. So if you're looking at Stringy as an example, he knows what he's doing on track. He's got everything planned out. He might not be the quickest driver over the whole race, but he, well, in fact, actually has got quite a few fastest laps as well. But so maybe that's the wrong point. But basically, he knows he's the opposite of some other guys in here who are too aggressive on track, where he's more calculated and plans it out a bit more. But yeah, we're just going to look at. I'm just looking at Nigel now overtaking Emerson, who's currently the championship leader at this stage. He's going to go around the outside. So like I said earlier, he's pitted for the soft tyres. He was on the hard tyres for about 20 or so laps, and he's put the soft tyres on at the end. So planning there to be as rapid as you can be at the end. And there, Emerson on the hards. Doesn't really have a chance, and I think it's he stuck his nose in there where he might not, where he should not have really. But yeah, it's unfortunate, isn't it? There. for the championship leader, and that puts Granty, who again was his closest rival, or was his closest rival at the end of the season, towards the end of the season, puts him in position to get some more points over him as well.
He did, and granted, I did give him a bit of a love tap, didn't he, going through turn 4, which did damage his front wing with the 5 laps remaining then. Yeah, Nigel there once again. He's had enough down season we touched upon that in Monaco. That's crazy about almost in the rear there. Again, I don't even. I've watched these, so why am I getting excited? I don't know. Sam had an incredible race here in Hungary as well. I think I'm looking forward to see what Sam can do next season. He's now had a league season under his belt, and he can really push on from that. Jonathan, we haven't really talked about it, have we? Because he's 24 seconds in front. I think that's one of the biggest winning margins of the season. That is absolutely dominating for Jonathan. Again, like as we keep talking about the top drivers, when they're out in front, they're absolutely dominating. And so we've got a punch here for some guy. I'm not sure who he is.
Yeah, definitely. That's no point watching that because, yeah, like I said earlier, I picked too early for the mediums and thought they'd go to the end, but literally on the second last lap they'd just gone. So I was trying to just limp it round for the rest of it. But well, props to Nigel and Stringy for getting on the podium or not.
Yeah, I bet. I think you got in front of string there. That's as Exile there. We haven't even talked about Exile yet. He is such a consistent runner that he kind of goes under the radar there, which is probably a bit unfair of us, really. But Exile, he is incredible driver, isn't he? Like Stringy, he picks up points, doesn't he? Wherever you drive, and it's a shame that Exile will no longer be with us for the foreseeable future. But again, we hope to have him back. Hope to have him back someday. But yeah, in the end there, the punch really cost you some 3 points in the end there, Naughty, that was a bit frustrating there. And that just shows how important strategy is. If you get it just one lap wrong, not even one lap, it was like about a mile away from home, and it just went wrong there. So what a shame there. And you can see Farfair once again out of the points there. Of course, he was the man who won 2 races on trot in the opening season. Now he was struggling down in the position there. And onwards we go, as we are now in Italy for round 14. And this is where the championship really hot. So we can see we've got another new friend here with a new F1, or Brandon, or Brendan as I like to call him. I've got to say, he rocked up and got a pole position. I think that qualifying this year, also, has been hasn't been that important, has it? I mean, the most pole positions is Murphy at this stage of the season. It's incredible, isn't it, how pole position doesn't matter?
I think it depends on the track as well, but I think there's definitely some where you'd rather be second going down the main straight, wouldn't you? So it's all over the place really in terms of well, it's good that we've got a variety really. I think like you said, Dan Murphy's got 3, but I think 3 pole positions rather. But I think there's not quite sure on the rest of the stats because you're the stat man. But we've got Emerson, Granty, and UF1 here who's just joined us as a reserve in this one. Fisher as well, who's also joined recently, but he's full time in Mercedes. And obviously John as well, who just put in quality laps out of nowhere, and they're absolutely fantastic laps. But then sometimes it doesn't help them in the race.
No, it does not, and of course, as we've just seen Farfar once again in the wars, that it just seems to be just a run of bad luck for Farfar to run, and Brandon there out in front of Sam. I think this is the beginning of Sam's downward spiral for the season, where he had a couple of retirements on the trot, unfortunately. Up until this point, Sam had a really good run of results of always finishing the races and picking up a point here and there. But this is where it just went a bit wrong. I think it's more frustration on Sam's part, where he was involved in incidents which he feels was probably the wrong end of that. Just watching Farfar flying through Panzer, who's made his debut here today, but didn't. I think that was his one and only debut so far in ALR. He was fairly paced, but unfortunately, Farf probably was not too keen on that move there.
Didn't end well that one.
No, it didn't. So, which is a bit of a shame there. And you can see then we've got a couple of new guys in the field. Of course, we did touch on Fisher, didn't we? But this is the first time I think Fisher's been the highlight video in this season review, and my goodness me, Nosey, I think we'll see in a couple of races' time of how incredible that man is. But I think if we're looking on to next season, I know this is the season 2 review, but looking on to next season, Fisher, a full season, wow, he's going to be tough to beat, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of the ones who will be up there with Emerson and Grantee battling for next season. So I think, like I said earlier, hopefully he's going to be a lot tighter at the top, or even tighter at the top, sorry, for season 3.
You're a hard man to please. It's so tight at the moment. There's 3 points separates the 3 points separates the two going into Abu Dhabi, and to be honest, I've also spoiled the season review as well. So I think that if I ever watch it, if I watch Star Wars, do not talk to me for at least a couple of weeks. Yeah, it's very tight at the top. I think this season's been fantastic. And this race again shows how incredibly it's just so diverse, isn't it? This race that you watch, you'll see Gunnar down in 12th position at the moment. Watch later on, he has an incredible race. This one does, and you can see we're just watching John, who I think he put too much pressure on himself. We see him incredible in Hungary, but in Monza here, I think he put too much pressure on himself. Of course, he is the homegrown boy from Italy, but I think a lot of drivers sometimes do that, don't they, where they just put too much pressure on themselves and then they just make mistakes and they tighten up in the car. Do you think that's what Jonathan did in this race?
I think it's a possibility. I think you need to. There's a bit of pressure every now and then with a league race anyway, especially if you're in the high points game positions. But I think you need to just run your own race, don't you? Really, you need, at the end of the day, you need to finish. Otherwise, you don't get any points, do you? So it doesn't really matter how you feel against somebody when you're battling against them. It's just, if you get the overtake, you get the overtake. If you don't, you don't. But if you finish, you get points. So, most of them get points. So, at the end of the day, whether he thinks he's the quickest driver on track or not, you need to just come home and make sure you get that car back without any damage, hopefully, as well. So I think some of the races that John's done, where he, like I said, for Hungary, it was in his control because he was only focused on his own race. He was miles out in front. He didn't have to worry about anybody else. So it really helped him in that situation. But right here, he's he's in 6th place at the moment, middle of the points, and he's got guys all around him, which is causing a bit of a problem, I think.
It is, and Roscoe just produced an absolutely fantastic overtake there. This was Roscoe's second race, of course, replacing one's truly sat next to me in the review video here tonight of Knowles. But I got to say, Roscoe, a great addition to ALR, isn't it? He's a seasoned veteran himself around the other leagues, and he's a hard Scotsman, isn't he? He doesn't get bullied on track by no one, as we're having a cracking look here.
Yeah.
And, it's brilliant to see Roscoe join us, and looking forward to see what he can do in a full season next season. Another man like Stringy, very consistent on his day. Roscoe is, and he's definitely a hard man to pass as well, and he can be an incredible overtaker. We've just seen Mr. Elite there doing a bit of drifting there. Laggy today, I think Laggy was on a very strong race. Unfortunately, though, we've seen him and I think it was Stringy come together, Laggy there. But up until that point, I think Laggy was on a great race. And you see the champion facing the wrong way, the championship leader, facing the wrong way. I hope that's not a spoiler. So as Emerson there is facing the wrong way there, and that really cost him some time there, which I think just cooked it too early, didn't he? There, Emerson did. His title never temperature.
Yeah, breaking into any of the chicanes around Monza when you're battling as well, it's always going to be a bit of difficulty. It's just getting your like I said earlier, it's just focusing on your race, and if you've got another driver there, just wait until it's a better opportunity to pass him. You don't have to get past him in a rush, because it's only going to affect your corners in the next corner for yourself and him, or the next couple of corners if you're still battling through all of them. So you're better off just keeping calm, putting your RS down to save some energy, and then deploying it down the straight, because you're going to get an easier overtake, and just blitz past them with DRS.
Yeah, especially around here as well. Of course, Monza the temple of speed, isn't it? And it's quite, I would say it's fairly easy to overtake, and that's one talking of overtakes. That's one of the nominated overtakes of the season there. Emerson on Gunnar and Crazy one, and a man who's battling for the title there, and he just he put his wing in harm's way, and that was some bravery there from Emerson. So, yeah, really a great drive up and down the field there. And we don't really talk about Emerson's battling prowess much, but going back to France, he had an incredible battle with Wishbone there, and I think that he is one of the few men that is very good out in front, but can also be a good racer as well. He has been tripped up this season. Don't get me wrong, but he knows how to go wheel to wheel, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, you've got to if you're going to be doing league racing or any racing. So part of the job is battling with other drivers, but you've got to keep it clean, which is what Emerson does really well.
He does, doesn't he? He doesn't get involved in many incidents, but because this is a highlights video, it does seem to be in a lot of wheel-to-wheel action, and sometimes it does get a bit overzealous. But yeah, Emerson and Nagy there are going wheel-to-wheel right now. And you can see Grant Boy has got the lead at the moment, doesn't he? Of course, this is, I think this would be, is very, again, another man on the day is very good indeed. I think qualifying sometimes lets Grant down. He seems to be more or less in the mid-pack, but his race pace is phenomenal. Once again, Murphy, second half of the season, Dan Murphy, I got to say, impressive stuff. We've seen him in Australia, he had a bit of a difficult time there, but since going to the red brand, my goodness me, Murphy has had a good season, hasn't he, overall?
Yeah, I think, I think it's pretty much, was it from Germany onwards? I think, yeah, he's been scoring some good points since then, really, hasn't he?
Yeah, of course, he probably wants us to mention about the quality lap, which was alright, wasn't it? Wasn't great, but
just got to bring it back up. Come on, keep going.
In all fairness, it was for me one of the quality laps of the season. It was incredible. It was he was just building up momentum for that quality lap in Germany, and then since then, you're right, Nosey, he has just taken on a absolutely new niche of life, and he was in the battle to the championship right up till Brazil before unfortunately got unceremoniously taken out. But I got to say, he's done a great job, and he hasn't won a race yet in ALR, which is quite surprising to me. But that win is not too far away, and we just in the incident between Laggy and Roscoe there. Laggy was very unhappy about that incident between himself and Roscoe, but Roscoe had a snatch of oversteer where he brought on the power on the curb there, and it can really like throw you off in a different direction there. Because when we was on board with Laggy,
sorry, it seems that there's a corner, at least there's one corner at least in every track that if you put a wheel on it and you put the power down, it will just spin you out, regardless of where it is or what angle it is. Turn 12 at Baku comes to mind. Bahrain comes to mind. Where everyone just goes around there, and everyone goes around there, gets one wheel on the curb, and it takes you out. And that's the same for. Oh, we've just got Fisher going for a little spin. That's the same for the Parabolica, I think.
Yeah, it can be as well, and also the Ascari chicane. There's two deadly corners on here, is there, in Monza, and of course the hometown hero Jonathan battling Dan Murphy, and they're all on soft tyres now on a sprint to the end of this race then. And I got to say though, I think overall this season the penalties haven't been too. There was one. I think there was one racing we just seen just before this race. There was a lot of penalties, but up until that point is Jonathan and Murphy there coming together there, which is a bit clumsy there. Up to this race, the penalty system for us, I think, has been absolutely great. These drivers are very clean, aren't they? As Stringy doesn't prove my point there, but I think overall, you see some other league races, there's penalties galore. With our league, I feel that the penalties is not as great. Would you agree with that, or do you think that's just me just picking up on something that's not there?
No, I think there's again, like I said, you've got to keep it clean. We've got a lot of clean drivers in this league who know what they're doing. Well, even for example, Dan, like you said earlier, his second half of the season's been amazing, and his second half of the season he's probably got less penalties than he did in the first half. So, and he's got faster. So you look at that and you can see that the improvement that's been made there. First of all, in the driving style, in the speed and the strategy as well, but also in the actual racecraft, if you know what I mean.
And talking of racecraft as well, that was an incredible dice there between Brandon and Emerson as well. We just seen Jonathan make an exit and a ceremonious exit in the Scottish chicane as well, which capped off. Well, I think he had high hopes for this race, and it did cap off a pretty miserable day. Albeit, I would have been very happy to be in fourth position at that time. Granted, there is on his final lap then, and as you can see, he also gives us a scare as well, doesn't he? Granted does. He just likes to be entertaining as always. But I got to say, in this race, he called the strategy absolutely. He just had a blinder, didn't he? Granted did, and he took his second win of the season here, which I'm quite surprised. I was saying that at the time, but Granty is definitely more consistent, isn't he? Rather than spectacular, but that was a spectacular race for Granty. Well done to him, and I think he did a phenomenal job there with Murphy finishing second in the end, and Brandon on his debut there, I think finishing third, if I'm not very much mistaken, which I probably am.
I think he finished third or fourth, but he did two-stop strategy as well, so he was only 14 seconds. I don't know what that is now. It's gone, but he was in 20 seconds there. It was, but he was in 20 seconds off. So he's literally, if he'd done a one stop, he would have been leading the race, I think, based on pit time rather. So yeah, on his debut as a reserve in the Williams, he did a great job, didn't he?
He did an absolutely outstanding job, Brandon, there, and of course he joins the Renault after this race, and my goodness me, that's one of the strongest pet, and that's probably what elevates Renault to the Constructors' title in the end.
But there we go, we've got Gunnar in there in P5 in the McLaren with no penalties at all as well, so fantastic drive for him as well in Italy.
Yeah, I echo that. Gunnar, strong drive, Australia, and he's on his highlights reel quite heavily. Anyway, let's go to Japan, shall we? Of course, we had an incredible race here last year, albeit some of the rules of that race was a bit questionable, but that's in the past. This was absolutely set up beautifully well, wasn't it, between Emerson and Granty on the front row, and Exile there. Unfortunately, his race lasted quite, basically very short, almost as short as my F1 career. So it's far from Nigel and Exile having a pretty appalling start there. Of course, one man who was fighting for the championship and another man who is our defending champion, not having a good start there in Japan then. It just looked a bit of a clumsy incident, really, from your point. Was it from your point of view, Nosy, or was it?
I think it was a bit of aggressive driving off the start, wasn't it, from the guys at the back, and we've seen how that happens. It always ends up in an incident, so we won't worry about that one anymore.
No, and of course we've also got Craig and Striggy there also come together in the second Degner, which there was a lot of incidents on this opening Japanese Grand Prix, but I gotta say, and look at Fisher there, my goodness me, and you can see then it all went slightly right there, and yeah, I don't know what these guys have been drinking. I think they had a lot of Monster or something energy up into this race, because my goodness me, that was a fraught couple of laps there. I was out of breath after that. As we're just going through the 130i here and just watching Emerson and Granty, I got to say, this was my dream at the time. That might show how sad my life is, but I think this is fantastic watching Emerson and Granty and Murphy and John Cox there as well. Top four drivers in the top four in Japan. It was brilliant to watch, wasn't it, Nosy? I think you was sat next. You was my Mark Hughes now, wasn't you? You sat next to me in the commentary box, guiding me along and making sure that I'm on the straight and narrow as far as Robert Tony has a good old run to driving speed. But this was a quality race so far, wasn't it, in terms of the championship battlers, like all battling in the top four.
Yeah, we saw Granty and Emerson on the front row of the grid, wasn't it? So yeah, they're both going for it. Obviously, it's getting closer towards the end, and it was still really tight in the championship, wasn't it? So yeah, one of them had to come out on top on this one. It was definitely going to be one of those two that won the race. We'll see in a minute who won it, but the strategy on this one, as you can see, it was Grillsy there on the hard tyres, and I think this is probably worse than it being a full wet race in a way, because it will ruin the strategy for the drivers. I mean, some people started on the softs, most started on the mediums. You see on lap 5 they're already pitting, so it's like, well, I think they might be just pitting for front wings and stuff, but they're pitting for inters. So they're basically they only got a couple of laps before it started raining on their dry tyres, and then I think it will see somebody making a bit of a mess trying to get in the pits there, but it really helped. I think Emerson with the strategy, because I think Grady actually unfortunately stayed out one extra lap on the dry tyres when the conditions just weren't suiting it anymore, and that gave Emerson the edge at the beginning of this race.
To be honest, it's such a shame. It's very rarely I say this, but I think having it rain in this race kind of took away what would have been an absolutely spectacular race, really. Which is a shame. I can't believe I'm saying that, because I'm a man who loves a bit of moisture in the air, but unfortunately in this race it just stole the show, I feel, from us. You can see Maxi there, who of course was our reserve driver for most of the season, and having a good old race up to this point. And let's see how he continues. Of course, we've got another Belgium in the field. There's John keeping it out of the wall quite nice there, coming out the 130R. We've got another Belgium in the field there. Gamer made his debut back in Singapore, and he'll be driving in a silver next season, so it's great to have him along. And he's very similar to Laggy, of course, Laggy, a fellow Belgium, where they're very quick, but they just need to keep on the straight and narrow slightly more. And I'm really looking forward to see what the Gamer could do next season in silver. He could be mixing it with the front runners possibly. You can see that the rain is absolutely bucketing it down now. We're on lap 9, and as Max there is giving Jonathan no room now, and Maxi was on his way then. I think you're right there, Knowles, though. As soon as the rain came down, that put Granty out of contention there, didn't he? Pitted one lap later. Do you think that was just Granty not reacting to the conditions, or do you think that the conditions just was just kind of like came out of nowhere?
Well, they would have been aware of it before in the qualifying session and everything before the race started, but I think when it's a session like this where it's either dry and then raining in the middle somewhere, or it's wet and then it goes dry, there's always a gamble on which lap you pit, and it's always a bit of a difficult one trying to decide which one it is, because you always, the way I do it is you're banking on the DRS enabled, DRS disabled thing popping up and telling you what you need to do, really. But some people, if you can gamble and you can do it a lap earlier, or in Granty's case sometimes even a lap later, it will work out. So it's just trying to get that timing correct, and obviously depends where you are on the track when the conditions change as well, whether you are near the pits or not. So it's all a bit of a guessing game, really, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of look at the draws there, which sounds a bit unfair, doesn't it, really? I mean, with all the skill that these guys do, is we've seen Stringy there make an exit from the Japanese Grand Prix, right where Fisher is as well, and we're eventually just had enough. It's all the skill that's involved, and then unfortunately if the rain comes at a slightly different time or wrong time, and it can win or lose your championship, can it? As we'll find out later on in this season review of who has won the big one. And then you see we've got Grills there, who is having a good old battle with a lag as well. We haven't mentioned Grills much in this video, if at all. I've got to say, he has shown flashes of brilliance, hasn't he, in some races, and then other races he just seems to fall away. But I think Grillsy overall, I think he's had a strong season, hasn't he, really? Looking forward to seeing what he can do next season. But how has your take been on Grillsy's season?
Yeah, he's been one of those drivers that has got some really good consistent results, and then there's some ones, like I said, that he's been a bit unlucky in, whether that be for incidents or just through the race pace, through the setups or something like that. But no, I think he's like I said, season 3 could be one for. Well, I'll keep going on about it, but I'm hoping season 3 is just you can't decide between the top 10 sort of thing. So it's going to be the last race that decides if you finish first or finish 10th. But that probably won't happen. But no, Grillsy, I think it's got the capability to be where he is in this race now, despite the conditions, and also to be further ahead of that as well. I know he can get some podiums, get some good points as well. So whoever his teammate's going to be next season as well is going to be pretty happy with that, I think.
Definitely. I'll be very happy to have Grills as my teammate. I must admit, I'm very happy to have any of these guys as my teammate, because some of these guys, all the guys are phenomenal indeed. We're on that 17 out of 27 around here it's a Japan is a very old school circuit, isn't it? So if you make a mistake, you will end up in the wall, as we have found out with a lot of drivers there that have retired in this race already. Fisher I wanted to touch on as well. Of course, Fisher had a bit of a nightmare race, but the last 2 races, remember, he absolutely dominated, didn't he? 2 wins out of 2. Singapore, my goodness me, as soon as Jonathan Cox's drive in Hungary, where he just walked away with it. Russia as well, he had a good old battle with Fireshot before Fireshot. I think Fireshot decided to call it a day quite early on in Russia when he was, I think he was unhappy with his tire performance or something, which a shame really, because I think that robbed us of what would have been an absolutely incredible battle. You can see Emerson there once again there. We failed to mention in this race because Emerson is we just seen John Cox there punting Laggy around there. I don't think Laggy was too impressed with that. But this is Emerson's first pole position of his career and season. So which is an incredible stat there. So Emerson there, well done for getting his pole position this race. And you can see then it's started to dry up now, and we got some soft runners out there. Grant is the first man on the soft compound, and you can see look how much quicker he is over Dragon here. And again, then it's exactly the same, but the opposite way around now. When is it good to go onto the dry tyres from where? And again, Nosy, when do you just wait for that DRS, or is it all about feeling in the seed in your pants?
Yes, it's that one. Sorry. No, it's I think what he did wrong on this one, on the first stint, sorry, when we had to pick for the inters, is he got the call wrong there. But I think he got it right on this one. But because of the earlier issue where he called it wrong, it just put him too far back, and so he didn't have. Although he was gaining and he was doing a great job in this race, he just couldn't get those, couldn't get the pace to challenge the Emerson stands and the NUF ones in this one.
Unfortunately not, no. And it's just on board there. He's coming for the 130 after the following time. A big shout out to Maxi. That was his best finish of the season in the Williams and ALR. So well done to Maxi. Good stuff. And hopefully we'll see him a bit more next year as well. But Emerson come through to take an incredible win here in Japan. There, I think that it was brilliant stuff. But as I said, I think we were robbed of what would have been an absolutely epic race between himself, Granty, John, and Murphy as well. Of course, Murphy did finish second in the end, but I think the wet weather conditions did definitely take out the other 2 championship contenders there. And of course, big shout out as well to Emerson and Murphy and Maxi for not getting any podiums there. Good stuff indeed then. So that was the Japanese Grand Prix. As we now move on to USA in Russia. My goodness me, USA in Austin. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no.
USA in Russia. Right, okay. When are them two working together?
I know something no one else does, obviously, don't I?
Oh, right, okay.
United States then. And I got to say, Fisher there was an absolutely incredible, he's an incredible qualifier, and from the front, he's dominating. You can see we got a debut for Echo then, one of the newest drivers for ALR, and I got to say he was impressive, wasn't he, Echo, on his debut. You can see a bit of messy turn 1 there, but that's standard in every F1 race, isn't it? Yeah, John Cox took the lead quite early on this one, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, he did. I think he got a great start on this one, and up the hill towards turn 1 he managed to get on the inside, well, he was on the inside anyway, of Fisher. He was pretty confident, I think, in this race as well, so he was looking forward to this one, getting cracking and trying to keep, because at this stage obviously he was still in the fight for the championship mathematically as well, so I think he was trying to get a win, get some good results, and hope obviously the guys behind him in the shape of Granty and Emerson that they didn't score too many points to keep the gap going, really.
Indeed, it made it a tense affair. We've seen a flash of a Bowden there, who of course ran Simpsons Australia, but yeah, so Bowden did make a guest appearance here, and it was good to see him. Hopefully, as you said earlier on, we'll see him back more regularly next year. If you notice the eagle eyes on the left hand side, there's a Chris who spams R2. I'm not sure if that's a Formula 1 reference or a COD reference, but whatever, that is actually Silent Shifting, who of course making a return back to ALR, so it's good to see a couple of the veterans there returning there. Gamer and Nigel there going side by side through the S's there, which is not really one I would recommend there, but I got to say that was some brave stuff at this stage end. But yeah, because this race was I think round 19, wasn't it, as into the pits comes Nigel. it was such a tense affair, wasn't it? This one was, of course, Jonathan out in front, and Granty in third with Dan in fourth, and Emerson there in seventh position. But he also revealed, Emerson, that he would be missing Brazil. So how did that play out psychologically then for the championship, right? For the championship contenders there.
I'm sure it gave him a boost for Jonathan and Granty. I thought that they probably were quite pleased with that announcement that Emerson made. But yeah, I think after this one, also went on to Brazil, and then the championship it got quite close after that one, didn't it? So yeah, the decider was coming up in the final race, but. Yeah, Emerson. Unfortunately, I don't know what the reason was he couldn't make the Brazil race, but yeah, he's done his bit to make the championship exciting, hasn't he?
Yeah, I'm sure it's definitely important to miss an ALR race. And talking of Emerson here, I got to say this is in terms of racecraft. We mentioned it earlier on the review, but this is what I was thinking about with racecraft because he has an almighty scrap with himself and Stringy in this race. I think Echo gets involved as well, and Exile does later on. I think this is probably one of my more favourite races of the season because my goodness me, it was a cracker of a battle between these two. These two were the highlight for me in this race. We've just watching Sam and Laggy there doing some drifting as well. Formula Drift would be happy with those, I think. Yeah, so I think it was a great battle between Stringy and Emerson. Really enjoyed it as well. So brilliant stuff. And you can see then right at the top it was John who was under almighty pressure from Fisher. In terms of it, because Fisher's not in the championship battle this season, so he could have gone for broke. Whilst Jonathan had to think about the championship. How does that change the way that you race? Do you have to change your approach?
Well, it depends who you're racing against, and because obviously if he was racing against one of his championship rivals, it would be a bit more pressure, be a bit different. So I think Jonathan battled really hard on this one, but at the end of the day, like I said, I don't think he needed to as much as he would have done if it was say Granty or Emerson. But yeah, it's one of those ones where Fisher's got the Fisher's just got the race pace in this one, I think, and he's going to get through at some point. He's in DRS range and there's no way that you can hold him behind, especially on that back straight where the DRS is so powerful anyway.
Indeed. Of course, there's a bigger long straight on that back straight. Just seeing a flash of Steve. Of course, Steve made his return back to ALR because you remember he drove in season 1, didn't he, for 5-6 races? And we've seen a flash from, of course, newly engaged there. So congratulations to Steve. I think at this time, this is his first race back after a very lovely holiday. Yeah, of course, Steve returning back to ALR. So it's great to see Steve back. And of course, he's a quick driver on his day as well, isn't he? But anyway, we'll go back to this battle here between Emerson and Street because this is what the highlights video was. And I was a bit biased on this one because I really enjoyed the battle. We were just in there, Fisher there, sneaked by Jonathan on the S's. So, but you can see then he took
at the overtake there.
Yes, I think Jonathan did stick his nose in there where it didn't belong, unfortunately, there for the British-Italian driver. But of course, then this is all experience, and next season I'm expecting Jonathan to be a formidable force to be challenging against one of the two men who's going to win the title of Granty or Emerson. And once again, you see the Echo here. I think this is his debut Echo is, and my goodness me, it's great. It's a great addition, isn't it, to ALR Echo, isn't it? My goodness. I was brave as well.
Yeah, he's a good racer, isn't he? I think he proved it in his first race, didn't he? Getting in the points. Just back to Jonathan, obviously we skipped ahead a bit there, but he's put the and again on strategy for this one, it really trying to get the life out of the softs and the mediums, and that's your strategy, either soft mediums or medium softs. And Jonathan, unfortunately, I think he pushed too hard in the beginning of a few laps against Fisher, and then ended up having to put the hards on to get to the end of the race, which when these guys have come out very close by to him and with the softs on, obviously two compounds different, and they're just going to blitz past him. So he was leading the race. Unfortunately, I think strategy let him down on this one.
It did, and that's quite an important point there, isn't it, about strategy? Because in the real world of Formula One, you've got like 500 people more putting their heads together about how to run the perfect race. All you've got is yourself. So it's so it makes it just puts the element on yourself so much more. And I got to say, at this point in the race, you can tell I know completely nothing about strategy. I was thinking that I was surprised that Fisher ran the soft tires, but it was the absolute perfect call. It was the right call, and he just flew by, didn't he? Jonathan just struggled to get the hard tires temperature as well at the beginning, and Fisher just bruising by there. Of course, there's a bit of some. I think as Jonathan there having a bit of a wilder lunge there on Fisher. I think that was frustration because of he felt that Stringy, of course, Fisher and Stringy are very good friends. Possibly a bit of foul play there, but it was all within the rule book, isn't it? And in the real world of football as well, we've seen a lot of interesting team awards in the past. But yeah, what was your take on that, Nosey? Or do you think that it was just kind of racing?
It's racing. I mean, we saw it in the very first highlight reel with Bogan and Twan. There was nothing. There was no incident that came with it. There was no damage or any contact. That's fair enough.
It is indeed, and Formula 1 is a team sport, isn't it? At the end of the day, albeit they are on separate teams, but I suppose Mercedes are now going to be supplying McLaren in 2021, so obviously getting that partnership off to a fruitful start again. As Emerson and Echo having a nice battle there, I got to say, the sector 3 around here is it's a bit Mickey Mousey to drive, but my goodness me, it does produce some good racing, doesn't it? They've side by side a lot of the time around, especially Stringy and Emerson.
Yeah, I think, like I said, those two, and I think it might be Twan as well, and some others. There's more than one line through Sector 3, it seems, and that just promotes more, side-by-side racing. Can promote a bit more incidents as well, but it was it was quite fun to watch going through that stream, that race.
It was indeed. To be honest, US Day for me is either a hit or a miss. It's either a quality racing like it has been in which we're watching here. And my goodness me, Jonathan and Grady are getting very close in personal there, aren't they? As they're banging wheels. But USA could be either a hit or a miss for me, as I think I was saying on the stream, where it could be a great race or a pretty dull race. This one was anything but a dull race. Now we got silent, or a man who likes to spam R2, and you can tell he's spamming it at the moment. He's trying to get by Emerson. It was a great battle, but unfortunately we won't see what happens. Was Murphy and Jonathan there. Jonathan showing the rear end there to Murphy there, so that was a bit brutal. I think at this point, Jonathan was a bit frustrated, wasn't he, about how the race was unfolding.
Yeah, I think the strategy there, he'd realised that what had happened, and it was a bit too late for him now, wasn't it? So. But yeah, going back to that, it's, like I said, Sector 3, Chris and Emerson here battling. I think it was every lap you were watching Sector 3, because they were next to each other for the whole lap pretty much, and then Sector 3 was where one of them would try and make a move. Oh, Emerson really lost it there, but and that's when Chris comes through, or not. No, he holds it. So yeah, but these two again, like I said earlier, where Emerson's really clean and he's a clean driver, but he's sometimes inconsistent. Both of them were absolutely perfect today in this race. They were respectful to each other, and they gave each other room where they needed to. They weren't trying to go for a gap where there wasn't one, and that sort of thing, which you can do quite easily in Sector 3. As we're running on, we're seeing Twan and Gamer here, so again, same sort of thing. It's just making sure that you leave some space for your other driver. Don't do a dive bomb where there's absolutely no hope. As you see Twan spinning out, unfortunately. So it's just keeping your car under control and making sure that you're not ruining the race for anybody else.
Indeed, and I must admit, I forgot about it. As you see, we're just in Silent and Emerson there coming to blows down in turn 11, I think it is, or turn 10. And my God, I think Silent held his hands up there, didn't he? And he did apologise. And so it happens in race, though, doesn't it? And especially when you've been fighting for 26 odd laps, it's draining, isn't it? Not just physically, but mentally as well. You've got to keep thinking about this, and then we also talk about strategy as well, because strategy is ever evolving. And unfortunately, on this day, say Jonathan got it wrong, but everyone else seemed to have got it spot on. Fisher, Murphy, and Granty were the top three. And as we're coming to the latter stages of this race, and I got to say, Jonathan there wanted to have a quick comeback here and win up the inside of Granty as we come to the final stages of this race. I think overall, of course, Twang returned back into Mexico. He had a quality race in Mexico, didn't he? He finished fourth in the end. But I think Twang this race, I think it was a bit frustrating from the ALR favourite. Of course, that man has been here since almost day one, hasn't he? Twang has. So of course he's also, I think he's a fan favourite as well, isn't he? But as we see, Jonathan there is fighting right till the end now. So. It was a fantastic race, as really was. Fisher won there by, well, it was 8 seconds in front in the end, but it was not an easy race, was it?
No, it was an entertaining one for sure, and I like just going on that. I like what Codemasters have done with the ghosting of the backmarkers, but. Yeah, Fisher, like we saw in Singapore and Russia, just commanding victories, and same sort of thing here again. And Dan did really well to jump up from 5th to 2nd, and then yeah, it's just a question of who else can get the big points. And I think this really this decided the championship in terms of it was going to be between Emerson and Granty after that.
Yeah, it was a too difficult task, wasn't it, going into Brazil for Jonathan and Murphy in the end. But an absolutely incredible race that was in Mexico. Absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. Probably up there for the top 3 for me this season. And now then, we will roll on to Abu Dhabi, and this is the one where you all want to see, isn't it? Who is going to be the ALR Season 2 champion? And the tension was definitely building on the Abu Dhabi grid, wasn't it? But I've got to say, one of the best starts you'll ever see in history was the debutant. Lights, my goodness me, Nosey. That was an incredible start, wasn't it, from the debutant?
Yeah, he did a great job there. I think he'll be back for next season as a reserve at the moment. So, yeah, hopefully you can get some new start, or some good starts like that. That's pretty good, isn't it?
My goodness, it was indeed. And we'll talk about that some more later on. But look at that. That was the decisive moment in the race for me, and it was quite obvious after that Emerson needed a miracle. But Murphy was very unhappy about that. But I'm surprised how chill Emerson was after the race. But I feel deep down inside he was a bit gutted by that, wasn't he?
Yeah, it really ruined his championship chances, didn't it? On the final race where he could have won it. So unfortunately, like that miracle, it was it didn't come, did it, in the end? And well, Granty ran away with the race and managed to get the points to win the title at the very end as well.
Yeah, it was. I got to say, my heart went out to Emerson because, my goodness me, and we've seen Fisher and Jonathan Cox both doing exactly the same thing. And I think Jonathan has said in the last couple of races that he did. He said that he was trying to trying to inspire himself from Fisher's driving style. But I think he took that a little too far there, didn't he, in turn 3? And then we have Mr. Elite in the background as well, going into turn 19. It was a bit of a mess in the opening couple of laps in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, well, turn 3 is a bit of a treacherous turn, actually. I think if you swing the car in a bit too fast and they haven't got the right setup, then it will go into it will either go shooting off to the left, or it will go too far to the right and a bit of oversteer and go into the wall. As we see with Sam there, he's flying through sector 1, and he's done a great job of keeping it out of the wall there. But yeah, so unfortunately for Jonathan and Fisher, it really impacted their race, didn't it? And that turn 3 impacted their race, and unfortunately they couldn't get past lap 3, I think it was.
Indeed, and I think Jonathan and Fisher are going to be in the frame for the title fight next season. We've seen Echo. That was Echo's first retirement in his first 3 races in the ALR. He's done incredibly well, Echo has. But going back to Jonathan and Fisher, them two will be definitely in the title fight next season, I've got to say. But they need to avoid these bad races, don't they, if they want to keep a title challenge? Because just look at Granty and Emerson this season. More often than not, they have finished races, haven't they?
Yeah, they've been doing a really good job of finishing races, even if they haven't been getting most points on offer, getting on the podiums and things like that. But they've both been pretty consistent. I mean, there's a few races here and there where they've been a bit unlucky, and they've been in incidents and things like that. But well, you can tell they've got a good calibre of racing etiquette and ability really to keep the car on the track and get some points for both of them, for both their teams. And just on that point as well, I was going to say, Jonathan, he did have a really good middle of the season, I think it was, and cemented that top 3 place, didn't he, on the podium for the championship rather. He was very close to Dan Murphy possibly catching him today, but he couldn't quite put it off due to the incident at the very beginning. So yeah, Jonathan, well deserved third place.
Indeed, I do echo that as well. The British Italian driver Jonathan is, I got to say, he and a big shout out to him as well. I think I said in this Abu Dhabi race as well. He is the only man to race in every single race in ALR this season, so that is commitment of the highest standard there. Farf was one away. This is the only race he missed this season, so Farf also doing incredibly well with his attendance, but I think he'd rather have been in Winter Wonderland yesterday. So that's a shame for Farf. As we just take a look at Twang there, who really look forward to see what Twang can do next season. I've got to say that his first 4 races was incredible. I think the Spanish race just went downhill, and then unfortunately took a bigger break. But Twang there was third in the championship before he bowed out. So surely we're expecting big things from Twang next season.
Yeah, he's a great driver. As I said earlier on in the video, he can do everything really. He can overtake, he can defend well, and I think if he gets a full season under his belt in season 3, he'll I reckon his team will be one of the front runners for constructors, definitely.
Indeed, and because I think Twang has had a bit of a start his career in ALR, hasn't he? He's of course he missed the first couple of races in his career where he had all sorts of issues with his steering wheel, and then of course he missed most of the season as well. So look forward to see what I'm doing in season 3. We're halfway through this incredible Abu Dhabi race. We just seen a flash of the 2 Renault boys. I got to say, no, so that was they were the constructors championship champions by this point, as we see Lights and Sam there really rubbing wheels there. I think that they are getting a bit too close to each other for their liking. They were battling tooth and nail there going down the back stretch there. So I think them two, that's a friendship blossoming, isn't it? As we go back to the Renault guys, they are the constructors champion. New F1 and Granty was incredible teamwork today. I've got to say, I think this is the best teamwork we've seen in ALR. Really good stuff, and you can tell why they were the constructors champions, because they really changed the game, haven't they, this season?
Yeah, definitely. There was no stopping them, especially in this race. I think they played it well. I mean, usually when you're in the middle of the championship, at the beginning of the championship, you're fighting for your own position, your own points. But obviously, NUF1 wasn't in the championship running at this stage in the season, at the very end. So he knew he had to help his team out in this race, and they actually did a great job of working together with the DRS to pull away from Nigel in third place.
It was incredible. I've never seen I have seen one or two of the past, of course, Striggy and Fisher, even though they have been separate teams in ALR, but they have in the past produced some incredible teamwork. But today I think that was quality, how they just towed each other along, and we're seeing the debutant Fords who was having an incredible battle with Storm as well. Storm making a return to ALR in season 3, and I think this is just a warm-up ready for next season there. So I'm looking big things are expecting from Storm next season. We're just watching Laggy there and Steve there get very close for comfort there. I got to say, Steve there joined halfway through this season. He is going to be a man to watch next season, and same with Laggy as well, because Laggy seems to have his Twang there is just going for a trip across the runoff there. I think Laggy on his day can be incredible, but again, similar with Jonathan and Fisher, just needs to keep him out the walls, don't they, Laggy, and just keep out of trouble.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't want to overthink when you're in the car, when you're racing. You don't want to be worrying about where you are, other people's races. You want to concentrate on what you're doing and get to the end with the checker flag, because that's the bit that gets you the points, isn't it? So at the end of the day, it's all about finishing the race and getting the most points you can get. I just want to touch on the strategy on this one, because there's a bit of a varied strategy on most of these drivers. They've been going through the mediums and the soft. I think some were two-stopping and using soft, medium, and some were deciding to go for the one-stop, which is the medium and the hards. So it was it really threw up a great race, and there was position changes all the time, pretty much every lap, going through the whole race, because all of these strategies were varying and everybody was doing different things at the same time.
It was wonderful to watch. I do love a good mixed bag, and I gotta say, at the time, it was very difficult to call, wasn't it? And we've seen in the Grant, they're all on the medium compound tires now, the top 5. Emerson is on the hard tires, but I think he was forced into that strategy after the mishap of the opening lap, where he took his family member Dan out. So I bet that's gonna be an awkward Christmas meal. So just watching Nigel, then I gotta say, Nigel overall this season, he's done all right. He's done all right, but I feel he just didn't hit his best this season. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the first ever ALR champion could do next season. But he did win Monaco, of course, so it wasn't a bad season for Nigel. But do you think that there's more to come from Nigel in the second season in Formula 1 2019 in ALR?
I think he's done a great job actually this season, because what I heard from him is that he's from the last game, when obviously we were on season 1, where he won, he has turned off the assists, and he's been trying to learn on a new game as well, how to drive without these assists that he had on the previous game where he won the title. So I think to come, I believe it was 5th or something, wasn't it, in the standings overall at the end of this season, with all that learning curve as well, has been absolutely fantastic for Nigel. So I reckon next season he can push on and try and retain it. Hopefully, we'll see what happens.
My goodness me, we're talking about the championship next season quite a bit in this video, because it was a very tense affair. We've seen a very warily William there just missing his breaking point there and taking Emerson out. It just summed up Emerson's race, unfortunately, today, and it was a shame for Emerson. It really was. My heart went out for him as well, because I think I was explaining in the commentary at the time, Nosey, that Emerson was very similar to Hamilton. He just rocked up and blew the competition away. But I think experience came out in the end, didn't he? And it was definitely a Granty boy, as we're just watching Renault formation flying, coming through the final turn then. And I got to say, Granty, well deserved. He has been incredible all season. Congratulations to Brandon, of course, but I think he was overshadowed by his teammates tonight. But a final word on Granty. He's been incredible, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's been here from the very beginning of the season. Obviously started off in Williams, but it was only for a couple of races, and he just came back and he put his right foot to the floor, didn't he, and just went going. Emerson came in a bit later and obviously was outperforming him at the very beginning when he arrived in ALR. But yeah, the battle between those two has been immense throughout the whole season. I think obviously it was Brazil when the actual championship standings changed in Granty's favour, only by 3 points. So it really made the end of the season, the last few races, quite interesting, didn't it?
As Noah said, it's been an incredible season, hasn't it? Brilliant stuff. Granty, well-deserved victor. That is it for season 2. So it's a bit of a sad day today. I've got a bit of a tear in my eye. But don't worry, it all starts again in the next couple of weeks then. So enjoy your Christmases, everyone. I certainly will. There's a lot of turkey on my plate that I need to eat. And yeah, join us on the 12th and 13th of January, where we'll be doing it all over again in Russia. Goodbye.